and thus far, Denny is the only known specimen of a first-generation hominin hybrid, meaning, across humans, chimps, and bonobos, she is the only known case. Furthermore, it turned out that this 90,000-year-old human wasn't even a mix of Homo sapien and something else, rather a split of two fully gone species, Denisovans, which makes sense considering the cave, and our favorite extinct relatives, or at least mine, the Neanderthals, with the testing showing that her mother had been a Neanderthal and her father a Denisovan. So suffice to say, this was a mind-blowing find, and one that came with immense ramifications, as it led to speculation that interspecies mating between Denisovans and Neanderthals could have been ongoing over several periods of contact that lasted for thousands of years. It also supports the idea that interactions between humans weren't always as bloodthirsty as media would have you believe, and that they sometimes had offspring. Another interesting find regarding Denny was that her mother's genome was more like that of Western European Neanderthal DNA, who were found thousands of miles away, rather than the Neanderthals who actually lived around or in the cave, implying that Neanderthals migrated east in several waves, where they then encountered and coexisted with the Denisovans. And as if things couldn't get any more interesting, Denny's DNA also revealed that her Denisovan daddy had signs of exposure to Neanderthal ancestry himself, only just a lot more removed, with the minimal amounts being traced back to over 600 generations before his life, which in other words is an ancestor that lived about 18,000 years prior to you. And this might all sound rather insignificant, but in reality it's quite monumental, because this find represents the first direct primary fossil. But with that said, there obviously is a ton of other direct evidence found in non-fossil form. In fact, within our own DNA, which also gives proof to cross-species breeding. But to find evidence of it so clearly in a fossilized individual is unique, to say the least. So suffice to say, Denny made quite the impression on anthropologists and paleontologists alike, and will probably continue to do so as we learn more about her. However, if I was a betting man, I'd wager that we aren't going to find any more first-generation hybrids anytime soon. But you don't literally have to be one of a kind to be extraordinary, which is best demonstrated by dinosaurs. Obviously, and I assume we, love these terrible lizards, and over the years they have yielded some amazing finds. But perhaps the rarest dinosaur discoveries have been specimens collectively dubbed dinosaur mummies. The name is pretty straightforward and accurately describes it. As simply put, these are remarkably well-preserved dinosaurs, who despite being millions of years old, still have skin traces covering large amounts of their bodies, making them look more like an animal caught in a drought than a fossilized dinosaur. The first of these exceptional specimens to ever be found was a large Montosaurus dug up in 1911, now dubbed AMNH 5060. It was discovered during an excavation in Wyoming, and rapidly became big news with the body being in pristine condition, and nearly fully complete at that, with the sole missing pieces being the tail, back feet, and part of its pelvis. It was concluded that natural causes, or perhaps dehydration, had killed this amazing creature, who then dried out and was rapidly buried, leading to its mummified-like state, which in turn allowed paleontologists to literally see what its skin had looked like, which in this case consisted of non-overlapping scales named tubercles that came in two variations. The skin was also noted for being shockingly delicate and thin, especially when given the size of the Montosaurus. But what really blew them away wasn't seen in the skin, as so much more than that was preserved. The fingers and hands were all kept well intact, while its nostrils had been spared too. Even hundreds of tendons could still be seen along the body, a first in paleontology, so no small feat. And yet somehow, since then, this mummy has arguably been triumphed by even better preserved ones. And this includes a Brachylophosaurus, nicknamed Leonardo, whose body is still 90% covered in skin, and even has preserved outlines of the muscles, making it seem like it died last year, not 77 million years ago. In addition to this, Leonardo has also maintained parts of its keratinous beak, along with a frill and the remains of its last meal, which admittedly wasn't the most exciting, being a bunch of plant material. Yet, inside the plants was something a bit more interesting and, at one point, lively. Worms. Delicious. Although, unfortunately for Leo, these creepy crawlies aren't thought to have been a yummy snack, but instead a parasite which infected him. No bueno. And then on top of Leo, we also have, of course, the infamous Borealopelta specimen that could pass for being asleep instead of a fossil. This early Cretaceous ankylosaur was found in Alberta, Canada, within an oil sands mine back in 2017. And funnily enough, despite being one of the best preserved dinosaurs of all time, it was misidentified for a brief moment, as until its discovery, no land animal had ever been found in the oil sands, and thus it was originally thought to be a plesiosaur or some other kind of marine reptile. But after a quick peek, it was pretty obvious that this was indeed an ankylosaur, and a nearly complete one at that. Given its amazing state, the fossil was instantly labeled as paleo gold, before it was even recovered, by the way. as that was a challenge in itself, as the mummy was high up in the rocks and quite sizable, measuring 18 feet or 5.5 meters, and weighing well over 1 ton. So it might not come as a shock that regrettably, disaster struck during excavation, and the mold meant to protect it gave way, allowing it to smash directly into the ground, which is also why the specimen has those large cracks all along it. Yet with some magic, elbow grease, and maybe some duct tape, it was able to be pieced back together, and thus giving us one of the most spectacular dinosaur exhibits of all time. Some of the memorable features of this dinosaur include preserved skin, armor, the actual placement of spikes, and its stomach contents, which in this case was made up of ferns, stems, wood, and oddly a smidge of charcoal. But alas, thankfully, no worms. Furthermore, something that makes it very unique is that it's the only dinosaur mummy in which melanosomes are preserved, giving us a window into what color it might have been, with tests implying that adults would have had reddish, pinkish skin tones whilst alive. And if I had been this Borealopelta, I would be darn proud to be on display. Because I mean, look at it, it's stunning. But I'm not sure if I could say the same for one more quote-unquote exceptional fossil that has caught 2 prehistoric animals in a rather compromising position. To be frank, I'm talking about a fossil that has suspended animals making love, and the only instance in history of 2 vertebrates being fossilized in such a state. Yeah, that may be hard to believe, but across mammals, reptiles, fish, etc., there's only been a single fossil showing direct mating, and the suspects, turtles, of all things. Though not any kind you find along the beach anymore, as the joint specimen consisted of the extinct genus Elaeochelys, which lived throughout the Eocene and Miocene periods in a multitude of continents. And fun fact, the family to which it belongs to is the ancient Keratocheliddae, who are still around today, represented by just one extant member, the pig-nosed turtle from Australia and Papua New Guinea, who, mind you, is threatened. Back to our fossil friends here, in the early 2010s, this specimen was collected in Messel, Germany. And though others of its kind have been discovered in the same location, this find was a lot different than anything previously seen, as it was composed of 2 distinct individuals who were intertwined and facing away from one another. Pretty PG, so you'd think. As in humans, turning your back on someone is like giving them the cold shoulder. But in turtles, it's pure love, because that's how they mate. Well, actually, it's not, but I guess these 2 specimens were a bit freaky. And we know it wasn't just plain wrestling or territorial fighting, as their tails were exactly aligned with how you'd expect mating turtles to have theirs. And then for just a tad bit more proof, detailed analysis on the size differences between the 2 fossils, as well as certain anatomical features, pointed out that this duo was without a doubt a male and female pair. So what exactly went so wrong for our 2 lovebirds here? Or rather, love turtles? Well, it seems to have had something to do with the place they chose, as these guys wanted a spicy location, nothing ordinary, choosing to mate in a warm tropical volcanic lake that laid deep within a crater. A bold choice to say the least, and one that would cost them quite dearly. Now I know what you're thinking, this couple definitely wouldn't have willingly waded into dangerous waters. And you'd be right saying that, as in fact the top layer of the lake was probably safe. The issue was that deep below there were toxic gases and other nasty things that were being released by the volcano. And newsflash, mating in water for an extended time is quite exhausting, especially so for turtles. And it's believed that after becoming fatigued enough, the pair sunk about 30 feet or 10 meters below the surface, thus exposing themselves to the dangerous gases. And here's the problem. Though they don't breathe water, this turtle belongs to a family with super porous skin. Skin that's porous enough that it literally absorbs oxygen through it. Therefore, while they could technically hold their breaths, they could not close their skin, and the toxic dangerous stuff quickly rushed in, thus killing the turtles. Whereupon they sank into the volcanic sediment and would remain there for 47 million years, embraced as one. And that's quite a long relationship right there. And as mentioned, this is the only case like it seen in vertebrates. Whereas I will say in insects and other invertebrates, they do have a quote-unquote head start, because despite still being rare, there are multiple examples where they fossilized mid-act. And lots of these cases consist around amber-trapped insects, but also extends to trilobites as well. And if you're curious about some other crazy amber specimens, check out the video I made on that just recently. But either way, I guess the takeaway in all of this is always be careful with what you're doing, because you never know if you're going to end up getting fossilized, or when and how it happens. And again, thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check it out now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or on mobile for some good old vehicular warfare. And use my links in the pinned comment or video description to register. And those of you who are new or haven't played it for 6 months will also receive a massive bonus pack across PC and console, including multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more. Thanks for watching, and until next time on Extinct Zoo.